Well, I can't speak for anybody other than myself. I'm just saying, and go back to the key point I made. Right now, the playing field's not going to get any more level where it is. That when you look at one incumbent apportionment board seat being open, both parties right now and the partisans in both parties there, this is an opportunity here to do something here that's reforming without being accused of playing politics. And if you choose not to get behind this and choose not to do reform, then come November 2010, don't complain if you come up on the short end of the stick there, because you have an opportunity to change this. I mean, right now, Republicans and Democrats have an equal opportunity to gain or lose with this proposal here. If we stick with what we have, somebody's going to come up short, and they're not going to like the results. And I mean, both parties have had two stabs at drawing the lines. Democrats had it in the 70s and 80s. Republicans have done it in the 90s and the current decade we're in right now. And so one of these parties here, under the current method, is going to get an advantage and draw lines, and it gets passed 3-2. Under our proposal here, a new proposal has to be drawn up and supported by 5 people. And so we think that what's of interest here is holding elected officials accountable to their voters at a general election, and not having people fight these extreme battles in either Republican or Democratic parties at primary time about who's more to the left of somebody or more to the right of somebody here, and then the general election, they're not responsive. And I would say this too, that the other reason why I think it's important, as long as we have term limits of the current length of 8 years in each chamber here, if you have legislators here who are elected in highly partisan districts here, between term limits and that, we are seeing, in my opinion, a decreasing interest of certain legislators to take an interest in overall statewide policy and the need to feel responsible to the greatest number of people in their districts. And I think that as long as we have the term limits in there, we've got to have something here where we have competitive districts, because elected officials, however long they serve in the legislature, should be held accountable and be expected to be responsible to all the voters in their district, and not just who they think is going to get elected in the next election. And I'm not making points of anybody here, it's just the way things are drawn up.
I spoke yesterday with both of the chairmen of both of the major parties to let them know that we would be introducing this week. I did not ask for endorsement or support, and certainly wouldn't expect it. But I think that it's reasonable to say that in order to get a supermajority of both chambers, and I think that's the most likely way this gets on the ballot, both parties would have to be at least neutral. I think that's fair to say after looking it over. But one of the things that I made the point with them, and I would make the point with anyone, is that if you look at the history when these questions have been before the voters, both in 81 and 05, and then in opinion polls, and you start asking questions about bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats drawing the lines, and you start, and the other lesson is, if the proposal becomes too complicated, it will fail. The voters of Ohio will defeat it. This is a practical, achievable solution that will make this process more fair and enhance the power of the people.
One of the things that the legal makes that process any better, or do you reject that whole idea?
Well, from what I remember reading the paper, that was all about congressional lines, not legislative. And they were going to have some contest to allow people to submit plans. Anybody can submit a plan. But I would suggest to you that if you look at the last election here where we had 3 open seats, we have competitive congressional districts now. We've gone from 10 to 6 Republican to 9 to 8 Democrat in 2 election cycles here. So, but you have to think that those districts here had to be competitively drawn to begin with, and as Ohio changes demographically. The League of Women Voters, we welcome to the table to do this, but one of the things I would disagree with them on is League of Women Voters, I think, would advocate that no elected official should be involved in the drawing of lines. I disagree. I don't care what group you represent, you're always going to have some suspicions about motives and agendas and biases, whether you're the League of Women Voters or the Chamber of Commerce or the AFL-CIO or the Farm Bureau. I'm not picking anybody here, but everybody's got different agendas. Anybody can submit a plan on this proposal here, but these 7 people would be charged with developing a plan. And I think we've seen here in the last session, when we have people come together from both parties to work on things of interest to the state here, we find a way to work together. The reason I think this is so attractive, again, is that if you're, I don't care whether you're a party chairman or just a partisan office holder here, is that are you willing to gamble that you're going to win next November under the current method? Somebody's going to lose. And it's just a matter of which party they're wants to say is, they're going to suffer basically for 10 years thinking is that, well, we're not going to be able to draw these lines here. And again, this ties into term limits. The time I've been here, I've seen a decreasing trend of people who come here, get elected, and worry about the next office they're going to run for, and as such, they do their public policy based on what they think gets them elected in the next primary. And I want to see that stop. I want to see these elected officials, for however long you're here, if you do move from one chamber to another or to another office, do what's best in the people's interest here, and not so much in terms of your own political interest.
I reject the premise of their argument on two grounds. And as somebody who's taught state politics for a while at the University of Akron, I've thought a lot about this and how to explain it to students. I don't think, first of all, we're a very diverse state. We've got a lot of big cities, we've got rural areas, wealthy suburban areas. We have a lot of diversity, and the legislature reflects that and the districts reflect that. If you've just got 99 people in the House and 33 people in the Senate who are squishy middlers because they come from a competitive district, well, that doesn't reflect Ohio. I'm sorry, it doesn't. That's not a reflection of the dynamics, the political dynamics, or the political culture of our state. The second approach I take to that is that my personal experience flies in the face of that. I came into politics through a competitive primary running against the established Columbus candidate and won. I represent a district that's 50-50. Can go either way. I probably shouldn't have been reelected in 2006 given the climate. You would think that I would be one of the moderate members of our General Assembly, and while I'm pragmatic, I think one of the things that I'm proud about is that I was a conservative when I walked in, and I'm going to be a conservative when I left. Now, does that mean that I don't reflect my district? No, obviously the voters of Ohio are comfortable with me, and what I think the voters of my district are comfortable with me, and I think what it shows is that you can't label the candidates, you can't label the members based on what you think their district is. There are other factors that make them effective for their districts, and I don't think necessarily a conservative district spawns an ultra-conservative candidate, or an inner-city urban district necessarily spawns an ultra-liberal candidate. It just doesn't always work that way.
This proposal